Welcome to this explainer. Now, I want you to lean in closely for just a second here. We're going to start a little bit differently today. I want you to picture a very specific, highly intimate moment, a moment of profound, life-altering transformation. But here's the thing, it doesn't happen on a grand stage or in some fancy boardroom or, under the bright lights of a camera. It happens in the quietest, absolute darkest hours of the night.
Picture this. It's 3 a.m. The whole world is fast asleep. There are absolutely no cameras, no audience, no one watching you. It's just you. And in that heavy, suffocating silence, it's just you and the weight of absolutely everything you're carrying, right? This is the moment nobody really talks about. We hear so much about the glamorous finish lines, but we rarely ever talk about those invisible, heavy moments in the middle of the night where the real, raw decisions are actually made.
And honestly, that brings us right to the core premise of our explainer today. What happens when nobody is watching? Because listen, real success, real gritty resilience, it isn't found in some polished motivational speech, and it certainly isn't found in a perfectly curated Instagram post. The truth? Your actual story is written in the silent, painful, entirely invisible choices made by totally ordinary people. People exactly like you and me.
Part 1. The weight of 3 a.m. The silent crucible. To really wrap our heads around this, we're going to look at 3 completely ordinary people who sat right there in the dark and made a definitive choice to rise.
Part 2. The Empty Fridge Promise. Sadia's story.
So, Sadia's story begins as a 34-year-old mother living in a small house in Lahore. Her husband had left. Boom, just like that, she was suddenly a single mother to 2 young children, an 8-year-old boy and a 5-year-old girl. She had no job, absolutely zero savings, and literally no family support to fall back on. Now, imagine a freezing winter night. Sadia wakes up at 3 a.m., walks into her kitchen, and opens the refrigerator. It was completely empty. She just stood right there in the cold, harsh light of that empty fridge. For most people, staring into the literal physical manifestation of their poverty, that would absolutely break them. But Sadia? She quietly closed the fridge door, walked over to her children's room, watched them sleeping so peacefully, and she made a silent promise. They will never go to sleep hungry again. Never.
Now, Sadia didn't have a fancy degree or a network of connections. All she had was that 3 a.m. promise. The very next morning, before the sun even came up, she started. She taught herself how to stitch clothes from a neighbor and just began selling these handmade clothes right from her doorstep. People actually laughed at her. They were like, "How do you think you can run a business?" But check this out. 1 year in, she had just 3 regular customers, but she kept stitching. 2 years in, 30 customers. 5 years later, Sadia owned her very own boutique right there in her neighborhood. Her son ended up winning a scholarship, and her daughter stood first in her class. Everyone saw the eventual success, right? But they didn't see those 3 a.m. tears. That empty fridge wasn't the end of her family's trajectory. It was the exact moment it all began.
Moving on to Part 3. 3 failures, 1 choice. Hassan's story.
So Hassan was 22, hailing from a small village in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. His dad was a daily wage worker, literally breaking his back just to earn enough for bread. And Hassan, he carried this massive dream in his heart. He desperately wanted to become a doctor to serve his people and make his father proud. But standing in his way was this massive hurdle, defined by a single, crushing number: 3. He took the intensely difficult medical entry test, and he failed. Okay, so he studied harder, took it again, and failed again. At this point, his relatives started getting in his ear, basically telling him to accept reality. They'd say things like, "This just isn't for you, go do something else, your family doesn't have doctor's luck." But despite all that noise, he took it a 3rd time. And you guessed it, he failed again. It was absolutely crushing.
Fast forward to 3 a.m. Hassan is sitting totally defeated on the rooftop of his small house. The stars are up above him, his completely silent village is down below, and his exhausted father is sleeping downstairs. Hassan looked at his hands and honestly thought his relatives were right. He just sat there in the dark for 2 straight hours. But then, this forgotten childhood memory flooded back. When he was 7, his little sister was deathly ill. A local doctor came to their home and with calm hands and gentle words actually saved her life. It was right then that a 7-year-old Hassan had whispered to himself, "I want to be the one who saves people." Sitting on that roof, man, that why came rushing back to him like wildfire.
He literally got up, went right back downstairs in the dark, opened his books, and just started studying all over again. He took the test for a 4th time, and finally, he passed. No way, right? Today, Dr. Hassan runs a free medical camp every single Sunday in his village, treating the very people he grew up with.
This right here proves a vital lesson for our explainer today. Failure is not your destination, it's your preparation. Because one single 3 a.m. decision from Hassan is now helping thousands of lives.
Part 4. It is never too late. Bashir's story. Bashir Ahmed was 58 years old, a widower whose wife had passed away just 2 years prior. Now, all his life, Bashir held on to this truly beautiful dream. He wanted to write a book about his village, preserving his childhood memories, the rivers, the mountains, keeping them alive forever. But for years, he had perfectly valid excuses. Work got in the way. Family got in the way. Time just kind of got away from him. Suddenly, he was 58, completely alone, and people kept telling him he was way too old, asking, who even reads books anymore anyway? He hadn't written a single page, not one. But one night at 3 a.m., tossing and turning, unable to sleep, Bashir finally pushed past the excuses. He picked up an old pen and a notebook his late wife had left behind, and with shaking hands, he wrote his very first sentence. And he just kept writing, every single night at 3 a.m., sometimes right up until sunrise. And guess what? In just 18 months, he produced a massive 300-page book.
The result of pushing past all those excuses was just incredible. A small publisher in Peshawar actually agreed to print it. His book became wildly popular in his community. His village was literally immortalized in pages that were being read by his very own grandchildren in school. Bashir died peacefully at the age of 63 with a huge smile on his face, knowing he had left a permanent piece of himself behind. He completely dismantled the whole myth that age is some sort of barrier to leaving a legacy. The reality is, giving up is the only real barrier.
Part 5. Your silent choice. The common thread. All right, let's pull all of these incredible stories together for a second and look at the fundamental architecture of their turning points. We've got 3 people, 3 vastly different lives, 3 completely different kinds of pain, right? Sadia battling absolute poverty, Hassan fighting through repeated soul-crushing failure, Bashir defying age and deep loneliness. But look closely, their common thread is identical. They all had a dark 3 a.m. moment where nobody was watching and where quitting felt infinitely easier than taking even one more breath. But they all made a quiet, totally private choice to say, I will not stop. It wasn't some heroic movie moment with swelling orchestra music in the background. It was just a quiet, stubborn refusal to surrender.
Because the truth is, it doesn't take perfect talent, it doesn't take perfect timing, and it certainly doesn't require perfect conditions. None of the people we studied today had perfect conditions, not even close. All it really takes is one quiet decision made entirely alone in the dark. The absolute most powerful version of yourself is not born in the spotlight, and it's sure as heck not born when everyone is cheering you on. It's born in the heavy silence of 3 a.m.
Which brings us to our final and most important question for this explainer. What is your 3 a.m. story? Seriously, think about it. If you ever find yourself awake in the middle of the night, feeling the total weight of the world, feeling like you have absolutely nothing left in the tank, remember Sadia and the cold light of her empty fridge. Remember Hassan hitting the books for his 4th attempt. Remember Bashir holding a pen with shaking hands at 58. Whatever you do, don't waste your dark moments. They are the forge where your legacy is built. Make the quiet choice to rise. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and until next time, keep going, even at 3 a.m.